The large silver spaceship hung in the sky above New York City. It had been there for 3 days now. People stood in streets looking up with open mouths. Some were scared, others were excited. But everyone knew that the world had changed forever. Captain James Wilson stood on the roof of the United Nations building. He adjusted his blue military uniform and took a deep breath. As the head of the United Earth Defense Force's first contact team, he had trained for this moment for years. But no training could fully prepare anyone for meeting aliens. "They're landing, sir," said Lieutenant Parker, pointing to the bottom of the ship. Wilson nodded and watched as a small craft separated from the main ship and descended toward the special landing pad that had been built in the plaza. His earpiece crackled. "Remember, Captain," said General Hayes from Command Headquarters, "observe and report. Show them respect but protect Earth's interests. We're counting on you." "Understood, sir," Wilson replied, his voice steady despite the butterflies in his stomach. The landing craft touched down without a sound. It was smooth and oval-shaped, with no visible engines or windows. A door appeared in its side, sliding open to reveal a ramp. Wilson stepped forward with 5 other representatives who had been chosen for this historic meeting. 3 tall figures walked down the ramp. They had blue-gray skin that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. Their eyes were large and purple, set in faces that looked almost human but not quite. They wore what appeared to be armor, though it moved like cloth. The tallest alien stepped forward. "I am Ambassador Trell of the Valari Confederation," he said in perfect English. Their translation technology had obviously been studying Earth's broadcasts. "We come in peace and wish to establish relations with your world." Wilson stepped forward. "I am Captain James Wilson of the United Earth Defense Force. On behalf of humanity, I welcome you to Earth." Ambassador Trell nodded. "This is my military advisor, Commander Korak," he said, gesturing to a stockier alien with dark markings on his face. "And our science officer, Mira." Korak looked at Wilson with what seemed like amusement. His eyes moved over Wilson's uniform, lingering on the sidearm at his hip. "You still carry physical weapons?" Korak asked, his voice containing a note of surprise. Wilson nodded. "Yes, this is standard for military personnel." Korak made a sound that might have been a laugh. He turned and said something to Trell in their language. The following days were filled with meetings and discussions. The Valari seemed peaceful enough. They talked about trade, cultural exchange, and sharing of some technologies. But whenever military matters came up, Korak showed the same dismissive attitude. 1 week after first contact, Wilson was invited aboard the Valari mothership for a tour. He brought along Major Diana Foster, his weapons specialist, and Dr. Mark Thompson, Earth's leading physicist. The inside of the ship was incredible. Corridors seemed to be made of flowing metal that changed color as they walked. Rooms appeared and disappeared as needed. The Valari were clearly hundreds of years ahead of humans in technology. "And this," said Trell proudly as they entered a large room, "is our defensive systems center." The room was filled with holographic displays showing the ship and its systems. Korak stood near a control panel watching the humans with those same amused eyes. "Perhaps," Korak said, "you would like to see some of our weapons technology, since your people seem so interested in such things." Wilson nodded. "We would appreciate that, yes." Korak pressed a few symbols on the panel. A section of the wall disappeared, revealing a window that looked out onto a large chamber. Inside were various objects, furniture, metal plates, and what looked like targets. "Observe," Korak said. He spoke a command, and a small drone flew into the chamber. It hovered and then fired a beam of blue light at one of the metal plates. The plate didn't just melt, it completely disappeared. "Molecular disintegration," Korak explained. "The target's atomic bonds are broken instantly. No debris, no radiation, no mess." Dr. Thompson's eyes widened. "Impressive," he said quietly. Korak seemed pleased by their reaction. "And now our defensive technology." He pressed another symbol and a force field appeared around one of the targets. Our shields operate on multiple frequencies simultaneously. Nothing can penetrate them. Energy weapons are absorbed and physical objects are repelled. To demonstrate, he sent another drone to fire at the shielded target. The blue beam hit the shield and dissipated harmlessly. "What about kinetic weapons?" Major Foster asked. "Like our bullets or missiles?" Korak made that laughing sound again. Such primitive weapons would be even less effective. He spoke another command, and the drone fired a small metal projectile at high speed toward the shield. The projectile hit the shield and bounced off as if it had hit a solid wall. "You see," Korak said, "your weapons technology is, how do you say it, obsolete. We moved beyond physical projectiles centuries ago." Wilson noticed something, though. The shield had flickered slightly when the projectile hit it, just for a split second. He caught Major Foster's eye, and he could tell she had seen it too. "Would you like to show us your weapons now, Captain?" Korak asked, his tone making it clear what he thought of Earth's technology. "Of course," Wilson said evenly. "We've arranged a demonstration at our military base tomorrow if you'd care to attend." Korak nodded. "We look forward to it." The next day, at a remote military testing ground, Wilson led the Valari delegation past various Earth weapons. They saw tanks, fighter jets, and missile systems. With each display, Korak and the other Valari seemed less impressed. "And these are your most advanced weapons?" Korak asked, as they watched a demonstration of a new laser-guided missile. "Some of them," Wilson replied carefully. "We have others that are classified." Korak made a dismissive gesture. "There is nothing in your arsenal that would concern us. Your weapons are based on chemical explosions and physical impacts. They are, what is your word? Crude." Wilson kept his face neutral, but he noticed something important. Throughout the tour, he had observed that the Valari wore no physical armor. They relied entirely on their energy shields, and those shields seemed to be calibrated primarily against energy weapons like their own. Later, back at command headquarters, Wilson met with General Hayes and his team. "They're overconfident," Wilson reported. "They've evolved beyond physical weapons and defenses. Their shields are designed to stop energy attacks like their own weapons, but they seem less effective against simple kinetic impacts." "You think their shields have a weakness?" General Hayes asked. "I think they've forgotten the basics," Wilson said. "They've advanced so far that they've left themselves vulnerable to simpler approaches. Their shields flickered when hit by their demonstration projectile. It was small and fired at a predictable speed. What would happen if we hit them with something bigger, or something moving at a different velocity than they're used to?" "Like a bullet?" Major Foster suggested. "Or a tank shell," Wilson nodded. "They laughed at our primitive weapons, but they might be our best chance if things go bad." "Let's hope it doesn't come to that," General Hayes said. "But start working up some options. I don't like how dismissive they are of us. People who underestimate others often have bad intentions." Wilson nodded. As he left the meeting, he couldn't shake the feeling that despite the Valari's friendly words, trouble was coming. And when it did, humanity's primitive weapons might just wipe the smug looks off their alien faces. He just hoped they wouldn't have to find out who was right. 6 months had passed since the Valari arrived on Earth. What began as a hopeful first contact had slowly turned into something less friendly. Captain James Wilson sat in his office at the United Earth Defense Force headquarters, reading reports from around the world. None of them were good. The Valari had established bases in 12 locations across the planet. They called them cultural exchange centers, but Wilson had his doubts. A knock came at his door. "Enter," Wilson said, looking up from his tablet. Major Diana Foster walked in. Her face was serious. "You need to see this, sir," she said, handing him a new tablet. Wilson took it and studied the screen. It showed satellite images of the Valari base in Brazil. Large machines were digging into the ground. "When were these taken?" Wilson asked. "This morning," Foster replied. "They're extracting rare minerals without permission from the Brazilian government." Wilson frowned. This wasn't the first time. In the past month, the Valari had begun taking Earth resources without asking. When questioned, They simply said it was part of the mutual benefits of their presence on Earth. "Have you shown this to General Hayes?" Wilson asked. "Yes, sir. He wants you to bring it up at today's meeting with Ambassador Trell." Wilson nodded. "I'll handle it." 2 hours later, Wilson sat at a large table in the UN building. Across from him were Ambassador Trell and Commander Korak. Several human officials from different countries were also present. "We've discovered your mining operation in Brazil," Wilson said, placing the images on the table. "The Brazilian government never approved this." Korak looked at the images with bored eyes. "We need these minerals," he said simply. "Then you need to ask permission and offer fair payment," said the Brazilian representative. Trell waved his hand. "We are providing your world with many benefits. Our presence here brings you advanced knowledge. The minerals are small compensation." "That's not how things work on Earth," Wilson said firmly. "You can't just take what you want." Korak's purple eyes fixed on Wilson. "Your world has abundant resources that you waste. We are simply being efficient. Those resources belong to the people of Earth," Wilson insisted. Korak stood up suddenly. "You should be grateful," he said, his voice cold. "Many species would be conquered outright. We offer partnership." The room fell silent. It was the first time any of the Valari had mentioned conquest. After the meeting, Wilson walked with Dr. Anna Miller, the lead scientist assigned to study Valari technology. "They're becoming more aggressive," Wilson said. "I don't like it." Dr. Miller nodded. "I've been studying the data from their weapons demonstration. I think I found something interesting." They entered her lab, where various screens displayed test results and simulations. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a video of the Valari shield test. "Watch carefully when the projectile hits the shield." Wilson watched as the recording played in slow motion. The shield flickered slightly at the point of impact. "Their shields are energy-based," Dr. Miller explained. "They're designed to stop energy weapons and high-velocity objects, but they tune the shields to specific threat levels." "Meaning what?" Wilson asked. "Meaning they might be vulnerable to certain kinds of physical attacks," she said, "especially ones they don't expect or haven't prepared for." Wilson thought about this. "Can we test your theory?" Dr. Miller smiled. "I've already started. We've been firing different projectiles at a sample of their shield technology." She showed him another screen. It displayed test results of various weapons fired at a small shield generator the Valari had given them as a gift. "Most modern weapons don't work," she said. "The fast bullets from our newest guns get stopped, but look at this." She played a video of an old revolver firing at the shield. The bullet, slower and heavier than modern ammunition, passed through the shield at half speed but made it through. "They've forgotten about simple physics," Dr. Miller said. "Their shields are tuned for high-energy impacts. Slower, heavier objects still have enough mass to be dangerous but don't trigger the shield's full strength." Wilson stared at the screen. "Keep this quiet," he ordered. "And keep testing. Find out exactly what works and what doesn't." Over the next few weeks, tensions continued to rise. The Valari established more mining operations. When governments protested, the aliens simply ignored them. Then came the incident that changed everything. Wilson was called to an emergency meeting at 3 a.m. When he arrived, General Hayes and the Joint Chiefs of Staff were already there, their faces grim. "What happened?" Wilson asked. General Hayes pointed to the main screen. It showed a satellite view of the Pacific Ocean. A small dot was missing. "The Japanese weather satellite," Hayes explained. "The Valari destroyed it an hour ago." Wilson zaned up. Blood ran cold. "Why?" "They claim it was spying on one of their ships," said Admiral Lee. "It wasn't. It was a civilian weather satellite." "They're testing us," Wilson said, "seeing how we'll respond." The room was silent for a moment. "We need to show strength," General Hayes finally said. "The President has called an emergency meeting of the United Earth Council. They're voting on issuing an ultimatum to the Valari." 3 days later, Wilson found himself once again preparing to board a Valari ship. But this time his mission wasn't friendly. In his hand was an official document from the United Earth Council. "Be careful up there," Dr. Miller told him before he left. "I don't trust them, especially Korak." Wilson nodded. "Neither do I." He had a small pistol hidden under his jacket. Not his standard military sidearm, but an old model revolver with heavy bullets. The kind Dr. Miller had discovered could penetrate Valari shields. The Valari shuttle took Wilson up to their mothership. He was escorted to a meeting room where Ambassador Trell and Commander Korak waited. "Captain Wilson," Trell said, his voice not as friendly as it once was. "What brings you here today?" Wilson placed the document on the table. "An ultimatum from the United Earth Council. You will stop taking our resources without permission. You will respect our sovereignty. And you will pay for the satellite you destroyed." Korak picked up the document and looked at it. Then he laughed and dropped it back on the table. "Or what?" he asked. "What will you do with your primitive weapons and technology?" "We will defend ourselves," Wilson said firmly. Korak leaned forward. "Let me explain something to you, Captain. We have been patient with your species, but our patience has limits." "So does ours," Wilson replied. "Perhaps," Korak said, his voice suddenly dangerous, "we should make an example, to show your people the true power of the Valari." Wilson felt a chill run down his spine. "What do you mean?" "A small demonstration," Korak said. "Perhaps one of your cities. Nothing too large. Madrid might be suitable." Wilson stood up quickly. "That would be an act of war." "It would be a lesson," Korak corrected. "One your primitive species needs to learn." Wilson turned to leave. "I need to report this threat to Earth immediately." "I think not," Korak said. 2 Valari guards moved to block the door. "You will remain here while we decide how to respond to this ultimatum." Wilson realized he was being detained. His hand moved slowly toward his hidden weapon. If the Valari were planning to attack Earth, he needed to warn everyone. And he was beginning to think that Dr. Miller's discovery about their shields might be humanity's only hope. Captain James Wilson stood very still as the 2 Valari guards blocked his way to the door. His hand rested near his hidden revolver, but he didn't draw it yet. He needed to think carefully. "Commander Korak," Wilson said, keeping his voice calm, "detaining an official representative is against all diplomatic rules." Korak made that now familiar sound that passed for laughter among the Valari. "Rules? You speak of rules while threatening us with your ultimatum?" "It's not a threat," Wilson replied. "It's a request for respect." Ambassador Trell stepped forward. "Perhaps we should all calm down. Captain Wilson, please take a seat. We can discuss this matter further." Wilson didn't move. "I need to report. Back to Earth. Now." "After we finish our discussion," Korak insisted. The guards moved closer. Wilson quickly assessed his situation. The room had one main door, currently blocked by the guards. There was another smaller door that likely led to another part of the ship. The meeting table stood between him and the aliens. If he had to fight, he would be outnumbered. "Very well," Wilson said, pretending to give in. "Let's talk more." He slowly moved back toward the table, his mind racing. As he passed by a chair, he suddenly grabbed it and threw it at the nearest guard. The guard stumbled back, surprised by the primitive physical attack. Wilson used that moment to pull out his revolver. The Valari in the room froze, looking at the weapon with confusion rather than fear. They had never seen an old Earth gun before. "What is that primitive thing?" Korak asked, sounding genuinely puzzled. "Something old," Wilson replied. "Something you forgot about." He aimed at the wall near the guards and fired. The loud bang of the revolver shocked the Valari, who were used to the silent energy weapons of their own culture. The bullet hit the wall, leaving a small hole. The guards looked at it in surprise. Then they activated their personal shields, shimmering energy fields that surrounded their bodies. "Your primitive weapon cannot harm us." "Through our shields," Korak said, starting to sound amused again. "Surrender now." Wilson didn't answer. Instead, he aimed directly at one of the guards and fired again. What happened next changed everything. The bullet passed through the guard's shield as if it wasn't there. The guard fell to the ground, wounded. Everyone in the room, human and alien, stared in shock. "Impossible," Korak shouted. Wilson didn't waste time explaining. He fired at the second guard, who also fell. Then he aimed the gun at Korak. "The shield frequency," Wilson said. "You never calibrated it for slow-moving projectiles, did you? You forgot about simple bullets because they seemed too primitive to be a threat." Korak's face showed a mix of anger and fear. "This is an outrage, an unprovoked attack." "You just threatened to destroy Madrid," Wilson reminded him. "And you're holding me prisoner. I'd say that provoked me plenty." Ambassador Trell raised his hands. "Captain, please, this is all a misunderstanding." "No," Wilson said firmly. "It's very clear. You came to Earth thinking we were primitive and weak. You took what you wanted, and when we stood up for ourselves, you threatened us." He kept his gun aimed at Korak while moving toward the smaller door. "I'm leaving now. I need to warn Earth about your plans." "You'll never escape the ship," Korak warned. "Watch me," Wilson replied. He backed through the small door which led to a corridor. Once through, he shut the door and used his gun to shoot the control panel beside it. Sparks flew, and the door locked shut. Alarms began to sound throughout the ship. Wilson ran down the corridor, trying to remember the layout from his previous visits. He needed to find an escape pod or shuttle. 2 more Valari appeared around a corner. They raised their energy weapons, but Wilson fired first. His bullets went straight through their shields, and they fell. "Security breach in Section 4. A voice announced over the ship's communication system. "Human intruder armed with kinetic weapons." Wilson smiled grimly. They were finally calling his revolver what it was. A kinetic weapon. Not primitive, not obsolete, just different from what they had expected. He rounded another corner and found what he was looking for. A small shuttle bay. 2 small Valari craft sat ready for use, but 3 guards stood between Wilson and the shuttles. "Stop right there, human," one of them ordered. Wilson took cover behind a storage container as they fired their energy weapons. The container melted, where their beams hit it. Wilson popped up and fired back, hitting 1 guard. The other 2 activated stronger shields. These ones glowed brighter than the personal shields he'd seen before. He fired at them. But this time, the bullets slowed down more before breaking through. These shields were partially effective, just not completely. 1 guard was hit in the leg, while the other avoided the shot. The remaining guard fired again, nearly hitting Wilson. He needed to end this quickly. Looking around, he spotted a control panel on the wall. He aimed carefully and shot it. The panel exploded in sparks and the lights in the shuttle bay flickered. The guard was distracted for just a moment, but that was all Wilson needed. He fired 1 more shot and the guard went down. Breathing hard, Wilson ran to the nearest shuttle. Thankfully, the Valari controls were intuitive, designed to be used by any species. He had received basic training on operating their smaller vessels during the early days of cultural exchange. The shuttle came to life under his hands. The bay doors were closed, but Wilson found the weapon controls. He fired the shuttle's energy beam at the doors, cutting a hole large enough to fly through. As he guided the shuttle out of the Valari mothership, he could see other ships beginning to pursue him. But the small shuttle was fast, and he pushed it to full speed toward Earth. "This is Captain Wilson to Earth Defense Command," he said into the communication system. "Emergency situation. The Valari are hostile and planning an attack. I repeat, the Valari are planning an attack." He looked back at the mothership growing smaller behind him. "But I've discovered something important. Their shields don't stop conventional bullets, especially from older weapons. They're vulnerable to our primitive technology." "Captain, this is General Hayes," came the reply. "Return to base immediately. We need all the information you have." "On my way, sir," Wilson replied. "But you should know, I fired the first shots. I had to fight my way out. They'll consider this an act of war." There was a brief silence. Then Hayes said, "Understood, Captain. You did what you had to do." As Wilson piloted the shuttle toward Earth, he could already see Valari ships changing position above the planet. The mothership was turning, moving, into what looked like an attack formation. And sir, Wilson added, tell Dr. Miller she was right. Our old weapons work against their shields. That might be our only advantage in what's coming. War, General Hayes said grimly. Yes, sir, Wilson agreed. War. Behind him, the Volari ships began to move. The aliens who had laughed at humanity's primitive weapons were about to discover just how effective those weapons could be. The war began with fire raining from the sky. 3 hours after Captain Wilson returned to Earth, the Volari ships moved into attack position. Their energy weapons lit up the night sky as they fired at military bases around the world. Buildings exploded into dust. Runways melted. Modern fighter jets turned to ash before they could even take off. In the underground command center of the United Earth Defense Force, General Hayes watched the destruction on multiple screens. Status report, he demanded. We've lost bases in Germany, Japan, and Egypt, an officer reported. The Volari are targeting our air defenses first. Captain Wilson stood nearby, watching grimly. He had barely made it back to Earth before the attack began. They want to take out our advanced weapons, Wilson said. They still think those are the only threat. Then they're still underestimating us, General Hayes replied. He turned to his communications officer. Send the order. Operation Throwback is now active. All around the world, hidden bunkers opened. Inside were weapons that most military leaders had considered outdated years ago. Old tanks, artillery, even World War II-era machine guns. Weapons that had been kept as museum pieces or for training. Now they would serve again. Dr. Anna Miller rushed into the command center carrying a tablet. Captain Wilson was right, she said breathlessly. We've analyzed his footage from the Valerie ship. Their shields can't stop slower kinetic weapons effectively, but we've made improvements. She showed them diagrams of new ammunition. We've modified bullets to be even more effective against their shields. Lower velocity, higher mass. We're sending the specifications to all manufacturing centers now. General Hayes nodded. Good work, Doctor. How quickly can we produce enough? We've already started. The design is simple enough that even small factories can make them. On another screen, they could see Volari ships entering Earth's atmosphere. The ships were heading toward major cities. They're moving in for ground attacks, Wilson said. They think they've disabled our defenses. Colonel Reed's forces are in position, an officer reported. General Hayes nodded. Tell him to proceed. Near the coast of California, Volari landing craft descended toward what they thought was an undefended beach. Their scans showed no active defense systems or energy signatures. To them, the area appeared abandoned. What they didn't detect were the old diesel-powered submarines hiding underwater just offshore. These submarines had been outdated for years, replaced by nuclear vessels. But their old engines didn't emit the energy signatures that Volari sensors were designed to detect. Colonel Thomas Reed stood on the bridge of the USS Grayback, a submarine recommissioned for this very purpose. All tubes loaded with modified torpedoes, his weapons officer reported. Fire when they're in range, Reed ordered. As the Volari ships lowered toward the beach, the submarines launched their torpedoes. The old weapons, modified with Dr. Miller's specifications, sped through the water. The Volari detected them too late. Their shields, designed to stop energy, weapons and high-velocity projectiles, failed against the slower but massive torpedoes. Explosions rocked the alien ships, sending several crashing into the ocean. Similar scenes played out around the world. In Europe, old artillery hidden in forests fired at Volari ships. In Asia, tanks thought too old for modern warfare emerged from hiding places to engage alien ground forces. The Volari were confused and shocked. Their superior technology was being defeated by weapons they had dismissed as primitive. Back at TU Command Center, reports of victories began to come in. Colonel Reed reports successful engagement off the California coast. 5 Volari landing craft destroyed, an officer announced. Tank divisions in Ukraine have engaged and destroyed Volari. Ground forces, reported another. Wilson allowed himself a small smile. They weren't ready for this. No, General Hayes agreed. But they'll adapt. We need to press our advantage while we still have it. Dr. Miller was working furiously at a computer. The Valari will try to recalibrate their shields to stop our kinetic weapons. We need to stay ahead of them. How? Wilson asked. By being unpredictable, she replied. We need to keep changing our approach. Different speeds, different masses, different attack. Vectors. General Hayes nodded. We've held them off for now, but they still have the advantage in space. We need to take the fight to them. I have an idea about that, Wilson said. For 3 days, the battle raged across Earth. The Valari continued their attacks, but they met resistance at every turn. Human forces used weapons and tactics that confused the aliens. Old propeller planes approached from low altitudes, hidden from advanced sensors designed to detect jet engines. Mechanical weapons without electronic components couldn't be disabled by Valari jamming signals. Supreme Admiral Vex, commander of the Valari fleet, was furious. He had expected an easy victory. Instead, his forces were suffering heavy losses. How is this possible? He demanded of his officers aboard the Valari flagship. They are using antiques against our advanced technology. Their weapons are unexpected, one officer admitted. Our shields were not configured for such primitive attacks. Then reconfigure them, Vex shouted. I want all ships to update their shield frequencies immediately. We are trying, Supreme Admiral, another officer said. But they keep changing their weapons. When we adjust for one type, they switch to another. Vex slammed his fist on a control panel. These humans are more resourceful than we anticipated. On Earth, Wilson was briefing a group of pilots. These weren't modern fighter pilots, but crop dusters, stunt flyers, and hobbyists who flew old planes that used minimal electronics. Your planes won't be detected by their sensors, Wilson explained. You'll deliver these specially designed bombs directly to their ships when they come into the atmosphere. A woman raised her hand. Won't their weapons shoot us down? Their weapons are designed to track modern aircraft, Wilson replied. Your old planes are essentially invisible to them. By the time they see you visually, you'll have already dropped your payload. All across Earth, similar briefings were happening. Regular citizens with hunting rifles were being taught how their simple weapons could harm the aliens. Car mechanics were modifying vehicles into weapons carriers. Earth was mobilizing in ways the Valari had never imagined. In a secure facility, Dr. Miller and her team worked on the next phase of the plan. The cargo ships are ready, she told Wilson and General Hayes. We've stripped them of all electronics and installed manually operated weapon systems. Good, Hayes said. When can they launch? Tomorrow, Miller replied. We've equipped them with modified nuclear warheads that should penetrate the Valari mothership's shields. What about the crews? Wilson asked. They're all volunteers, Hayes said solemnly. They understand the risk. Wilson nodded. Earth was fighting for its survival and sacrifices would have to be made. The next day, 12 cargo ships lifted off from various locations around the world. They had been modified to reach space using old rocket technology. No computers, no advanced guidance systems, just brave pilots making manual calculations. As they approached the Valari fleet in orbit, the alien ships initially ignored them. Their sensors registered the cargo ships as debris or primitive vehicles of no threat. By the time they realized their mistake, it was too late. The cargo ships deployed their weapons, simple nuclear warheads modified to travel at unusual speeds that the Valari shields weren't calibrated for. 3 of them struck the flagship directly. Supreme Admiral Vex watched in horror as alarms blared throughout his ship. Sections were being destroyed by what his officers had assured him were harmless human vessels. Retreat, he ordered. All ships pull back and regroup. For the first time since the war began, the Valari fleet withdrew from Earth orbit. They needed time to reassess their strategy against an enemy that fought like no other they had encountered before. On Earth, people watched as the alien ships pulled away. It wasn't victory yet, but it was hope. They'll be back, General Hayes said as he watched the ships retreat. Yes, Wilson agreed, but now they know we're not as primitive as they thought, and will be ready for round 2. 3 months after the war began, Earth had become a different place. Cities bore the scars of Valari attacks. Regular people had become soldiers, and the United Earth Defense Force had transformed into a powerful fighting machine that combined old and new technologies in ways the Valeri still struggled to counter. Captain James Wilson, now promoted to admiral, stood in the main control room of the newly completed space defense platform. Around him, technicians prepared for humanity's boldest move yet. "Operation Thunderbolt is ready to launch, Admiral," reported Colonel Thomas Reed, who had become Wilson's second-in-command after his success with the submarine attacks. Wilson nodded. "Show me the fleet." A large screen displayed Earth's assembled Space Forces. 20 converted cargo ships had been fitted with railguns, simple weapons that used magnetism to fire metal projectiles at high speed. The ships looked ugly and crude compared to the sleek Valeri vessels, but they were deadly effective. Behind them were another 30 ships carrying nuclear missiles, specifically designed to defeat Valeri shields. These weren't the elegant spacecraft from science fiction movies. They were blocky, practical vessels built for one purpose: to take the fight to the enemy. "All ships report ready, sir," Reed said. Wilson took a deep breath. "Send the order. Operation Thunderbolt begins now." Throughout, the fleet captains received their orders, engines fired, and Earth's makeshift navy moved toward the Valeri fleet, which had regrouped behind the moon. On the Valeri flagship, Supreme Admiral Vex received the alert. "Human vessels approaching," an officer reported. "They appear to be modified transport ships." Vex studied the images with narrowed eyes. The humans had surprised him once. He would not underestimate them again. "They've strengthened their shields," he said. "Our science division has studied their primitive weapons and recalibrated our defenses. They won't penetrate so easily this time." "Should we engage, Supreme Admiral?" asked his second-in-command. "Yes," Vex decided, "but cautiously. Send the third battle group to intercept them." The Valeri ships moved forward, their weapons ready. They had learned from their earlier defeats and had modified their sensors to detect the old-style engines and weapons the humans were using. What they didn't expect was for the humans to have adapted too. As the Valeri ships approached, the human vessels suddenly changed formation. Hidden compartments opened, revealing weapons the Valeri had never seen before. "What are those?" Vex demanded as the images came through. "Unknown, Supreme Admiral," his officer replied. "They appear to be primitive projectile launchers, but larger than any we've encountered." The human ships fired their railguns, massive metal slugs, some weighing several tons, shot toward the Valeri vessels. The aliens' shields, recalibrated to stop the smaller projectiles from earlier battles, couldn't handle the sheer mass of these new weapons. 3 Valeri ships were hit directly. Their shields flared and failed, and the metal slugs tore through their hulls. "Impossible," Vex shouted. "They're using even more primitive technology." "They've increased the mass and decreased the velocity," his science officer explained. "Our new shield configurations weren't designed for such heavy objects." Vex slammed his fist on his command chair. "Recalibrate again. All ships. Adjust shields for maximum mass resistance." The Valeri fleet scrambled to adapt. Their ships began to change their shield frequencies, preparing for the heavy projectiles. But Admiral Wilson had anticipated this. "Phase 2, he ordered, over the communication system. The second wave of human ships now fired their weapons. But instead of heavy slugs, they launched thousands of small metal balls, similar to shotgun pellets but designed for space combat. The tiny projectiles moved at much higher speeds than the slugs, easily penetrating the Valeri shields that had just been recalibrated for heavy, slow objects. More Valeri ships suffered damage as the small projectiles shredded their external systems. "They're changing tactics faster than we can adapt," Vex's second-in-command cried. Vex saw his advantage slipping away. "All ships forward. Use energy weapons at maximum power. Destroy them before they can fire again." The Valeri fleet surged forward, firing their disintegration beams at the human ships. Several human vessels were hit, turning instantly to dust. But the humans had prepared for this too. The remaining ships split into smaller groups, making it harder for the Valeri to target them all. And they kept changing weapons, sometimes firing heavy projectiles, sometimes light ones, sometimes at high speed. sometimes at low speed. The Volari shields couldn't be recalibrated fast enough to stop all these different attacks. Ship after ship took damage. On the space defense platform, Wilson watched the battle unfold. "They're confused," he said to Reed. "Their technology is so advanced that they never needed to develop tactical flexibility. They don't know how to handle an enemy that keeps changing approaches." "Should we launch the final phase?" Reed asked. Wilson checked the battle data one more time. The Volari flagship was now exposed, its escort ships drawn away by the human fleet's movements. "Launch final phase," Wilson ordered. 5 ships that had been hiding behind Earth's moon now powered up their engines. These vessels carried the most powerful weapons humans had ever built, modified nuclear warheads mounted on railguns. The combination allowed the warheads to bypass shields calibrated for either conventional nuclear missiles or railgun projectiles. Vex saw the new ships. Too late. "What are those? Where did they come from?" Before his officers could respond, the human ships fired. The special warhead struck the Volari flagship directly. Its shields flickered and failed. Secondary explosions ripped through the massive ship. "We've lost engine control," an officer shouted as the bridge shook violently. "Weapons offline, shields down." For the first time in his military career, Supreme Admiral Vex felt true fear. His mighty flagship, the pride of the Volari fleet, was crippled by weapons he had once laughed at. "Order all ships to protect the flagship," he commanded. "Prepare for emergency." His words were cut off as another hit rocked the ship. The lights went out, replaced by emergency lighting. Vex knew the battle was lost. "Send the surrender signal," he said quietly. Hours later, Wilson stood in what remained of the Volari flagship's bridge. Volari crew members, now prisoners, watched as human soldiers secured the ship. Supreme Admiral Vex sat in his command chair, his proud face now showing defeat. "How?" he asked as Wilson approached. "How did your primitive species defeat our advanced technology?" Wilson looked at the alien. "Commander, we never forgot our history," he replied. "While you advanced so far that you abandoned your past, we kept learning from ours. Each generation of weapons taught us something new, and we kept that knowledge." "But your weapons were so simple," Vex said. "Simple doesn't mean ineffective," Wilson corrected. "You thought newer always meant better. That was your mistake." 2 weeks later, representatives from Earth and the Volari Confederation met to sign a peace treaty. The terms were fair but firm. The Volari would respect Earth's boundaries. They would pay for the damage they had caused, and they would begin a technology exchange program that would benefit both species. After the ceremony, Wilson stood with Dr. Miller, looking out at the stars through a large window. "Do you think they've learned their lesson?" Miller asked. "I hope so," Wilson replied. "Not just about Earth, but about technology itself. The newest isn't always the best. Sometimes the old ways still have value." Miller nodded. "That's a lesson for us too, isn't it? As we gain their technology, we shouldn't forget what got us through this war." "Exactly," Wilson agreed. "The best path forward isn't just chasing the newest thing. It's taking the best of the old and combining it with the best of the new." He looked at the stars again, thinking about the strange path that had led to this moment. The aliens had laughed at humanity's primitive weapons. Now those same aliens were studying those weapons with new respect. Sometimes, Wilson thought, being underestimated was the greatest advantage of all. The morning started like any other aboard the Earth Defense Fleet vessel Horizon. Captain Marcus Reed stood on the bridge watching the stars through the main viewport while sipping his coffee. The ship moved slowly through space near the outer colonies, doing routine patrol work that had become almost boring over the past few years. "Sir, we're getting some strange readings," called out Lieutenant Tom Baker from his station. His voice carried a note of concern that made Marcus set down his cup and walk over. "What kind of strange?" Marcus asked, looking at the screen full of numbers and wave patterns that meant little to him, but everything to his science officer. Tom frowned at his instruments. "Energy signatures that don't match anything in our database. They're coming from the direction of New Haven Colony. Very powerful. Very wrong somehow." Marcus felt a cold feeling in his stomach. New Haven was home to over 2 million people, mostly farmers and their families who had volunteered to help feed the growing human colonies scattered across 12 different worlds. It was supposed to be one of the safest places in human space. "Try to contact them," Marcus ordered. Tom worked at his console for several minutes, his frown deepening with each failed attempt. "Nothing, sir. Complete radio silence. That's not normal for New Haven. They usually have 3 communication satellites active at all times." The bridge fell quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. Marcus had been in command for 8 years, and he had learned to trust his instincts. Right now, those instincts were screaming that something was very wrong. "Set course for New Haven. Maximum speed," he commanded. The journey took 6 hours. During that time, Marcus tried to stay calm, but the silence from New Haven grew more frightening with each passing minute. Other colonies reported normal status. Trading ships moving through nearby space showed nothing unusual. Only New Haven remained mysteriously quiet. When they finally arrived at the New Haven system, Marcus understood why his instincts had been screaming. The planet was dead. Not dead in the natural way that planets sometimes died, with climate change or asteroid impacts. This was different. This was deliberate. From orbit, they could see that every city, every town, every small farming settlement had been systematically destroyed. The destruction was too precise to be natural, too complete to be accidental. "Life signs?" Marcus asked quietly. Lieutenant Sarah Chen, the ship's medical officer, worked at her scanner with shaking hands. "None, sir. Not even animals. Everything that was alive isn't anymore." The crew of the Horizon stared at their screens in horror. Marcus had seen war before, had seen planets damaged by fighting, but nothing like this. This wasn't war. This was extermination. "Send a message to Earth Command immediately," Marcus ordered. "Priority Alpha. We need investigation teams here right away." As they waited for reinforcements, Marcus ordered landing parties to gather evidence. What they found on the surface would haunt them forever. The attackers had been methodical, going house by house, building by building. They had killed everyone, men, women, children, even pets. But they had also left something behind. In the main square of New Haven's capital city, they found a message burned into the ground in letters 50 feet tall. The language was alien, but the ship's computer was able to translate it after comparing it to linguistic databases. Property of the Dominion. Inferior species eliminated. Surrender or face the same fate. 3 days later, the colony of Bright Star went silent. Then Garden World. Then New Terra. Each time the same methodical extermination. Each time the same message. Back on Earth, the news spread like wildfire. 12 billion humans learned that somewhere in space, an alien race called the Dominion had decided that humanity did not deserve to exist. The aliens had superior technology, more ships, and apparently no conscience whatsoever. Earth's government tried to make diplomatic contact. They sent messages offering to negotiate, to find peaceful solutions, to avoid further conflict. The Dominion's response was simple: complete surrender or complete extinction. They gave humanity 30 days to evacuate all colonies and submit to slavery, or they would begin systematically destroying every human world, including Earth itself. As the deadline approached, something strange began happening on Earth. Dr. Elena Cross was the first to notice it. She worked at the Global Geological Survey, monitoring earthquakes and volcanic activity around the world. For 20 years, she had watched Earth's natural rhythms, learning to predict when and where the planet might shake or rumble. But now, the planet was doing things that made no sense. Seismic activity was increasing, but not in random patterns. The earthquakes seemed to be following some kind of schedule, as if the planet was responding to something. Deep underground, monitoring stations detected electromagnetic pulses that had no natural explanation. "It started 3 days ago," Elena told her supervisor, Dr. Michael Stone. "Right after the news about the massacres went public." Michael looked at the data, his face skeptical. Coincidence? Geological activity doesn't respond to human emotions, Elena. But Elena wasn't convinced. She had been studying Earth her entire career, and she knew when something was different. The planet felt different. It felt angry. The magnetic field around Earth began fluctuating in patterns that matched no known natural phenomenon. Weather systems started moving in ways that defied meteorological models. Deep ocean temperatures rose slightly, but only in specific areas that seemed to correspond with major population centers. As the Dominion deadline approached, Earth's strange behavior intensified. Reports came in from around the world of unusual phenomena. The aurora borealis appeared over cities where it had never been seen before. Tidal patterns changed. Even the length of days seemed to be shifting by microseconds. On the final day before the Dominion deadline, Admiral James Porter stood in Earth's primary military command center, preparing for a war he knew humanity couldn't win. The enemy had destroyed 4 human colonies without losing a single ship. Their technology was centuries ahead of human capabilities. But as he watched the global monitoring displays, Admiral Porter noticed something that gave him a strange feeling of hope. Every screen showing Earth's geological activity was lighting up like a Christmas tree. The planet was more active than it had been in recorded history, and somehow he had the strangest feeling that Earth was getting ready for a fight. As the deadline passed and Dominion fleets began moving toward the inner colonies, deep beneath Earth's surface, something ancient and powerful began to stir. The planet that had given birth to humanity was about to become something the universe had never seen before. The war was about to begin, and Earth itself was choosing sides. Dr. Elena Cross had not slept in 3 days. She sat in her laboratory surrounded by computer screens showing data that should have been impossible. Earth was behaving like a living creature that had just learned about the death of its children. "Look at this," she said to her assistant, Dr. Paul Wright, pointing at a graph on her main screen. Every time news of another colony massacre is broadcast, Earth's core temperature spikes. Not randomly. It spikes in direct response to human emotional reactions. Paul stared at the data, rubbing his tired eyes. "That's not possible, Elena. Planets don't have feelings. They don't respond to emotions." But the evidence was right there in front of them. When 12 billion humans had learned about the genocide of New Haven, Earth's magnetic field had shifted. When the death toll from all 4 colonies was announced, 8.7 million people murdered. The planet's rotation had actually slowed by 3 microseconds. "It's like Earth is mourning," Elena whispered. Meanwhile, in space, Admiral James Porter was learning that conventional warfare meant nothing against the Dominion. The first major battle had been a disaster. 24 human ships against 8 Dominion vessels. The aliens had destroyed the entire human fleet in less than an hour, losing only 2 of their own ships. Captain Lisa Park had been one of the few survivors, her ship badly damaged but still functioning. She reported back to Admiral Porter with news that crushed what little hope remained. "Their shields are impenetrable, sir," she said over the communication link, her face pale and exhausted. "Our weapons barely scratch their hull plating. Their energy beams cut through our best armor like it's paper. We're not just outgunned. We're fighting with stone knives against laser rifles." Admiral Porter closed his eyes and tried to think of some strategy, some tactic that might give humanity a chance. But the mathematics were simple and brutal. The Dominion had over 3,000 ships. Humanity had built fewer than 200 vessels capable of space combat. Back on Earth, something extraordinary was beginning to happen. Dr. Elena Cross was the first to document it, but she wasn't the first to experience it. In mining operations around the world, workers began reporting strange discoveries. Deep underground, new types of rock formations were appearing, crystalline structures that seemed to pulse with their own internal light. "These formations don't match any known geological processes," Elena reported to the Global Science Council. "They're appearing spontaneously at depths where rock formation should take millions of years. And they're not just random. They're following patterns that suggest deliberate creation. The crystals had properties that defied physics. They conducted electricity better than copper, but they also seemed to store energy in ways that scientists couldn't explain. When subjected to electromagnetic fields, they resonated at frequencies that made sensitive equipment malfunction in beneficial ways. Computers ran faster, power cells lasted longer, communication systems became more efficient. But the most disturbing discovery came when Dr. Cross ran emotional response tests near the crystal formations. When test subjects experience fear or anger near these crystals, the formations become more active, she reported. But when subjects feel protective emotions, particularly about family or children, the crystal's energy output increases by factors we can't measure accurately. It's as if they're responding to human protective instincts. As Earth's strange transformation continued, its effects began reaching into space. Commander David Kane was aboard the battleship Terra's Pride when his crew noticed that their ship's systems were performing beyond specifications. Engineering reports that our engines are somehow 20% more efficient than yesterday, his second officer reported. Our weapon systems are charging faster, our shields are stronger, and our sensor range has increased significantly. Similar reports came in from every human ship operating within 50 million kilometers of Earth. The closer they got to their home planet, the more enhanced their technology became. The Dominion noticed these improvements and responded with overwhelming force. They sent a massive fleet to crush what they saw as minor human technological advances. The Battle of Luna was supposed to be humanity's final defeat. Instead, it became something unprecedented. Commander Lisa Park led a fleet of 36 human ships against 90 Dominion vessels. By every calculation, it should have been another massacre. But as the human fleet approached Earth's moon, something amazing happened. All ships are reporting system enhancements beyond anything we've seen, Park's tactical officer announced. Our weapons are somehow phasing through their shields. Our ships are moving faster than should be physically possible. And sir, I can't explain this, but I feel like I know exactly what every enemy ship is going to do before they do it. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, 87 Dominion ships had been destroyed or disabled. The human fleet had lost only 3 vessels. For the first time since the war began, humanity had won a victory. But victory came with disturbing changes. The human crews reported experiences that military psychologists couldn't explain. Pilots described feeling connected not just to their ships, but to Earth itself. Gunners reported targeting systems that seemed to aim themselves. Navigation officers found themselves plotting courses through space using instincts they had never possessed before. It's like Earth is teaching us how to fight, one pilot reported. I can feel the planet's anger, and somehow that anger is making us better warriors. Dr. Elena Cross realized that Earth's transformation was far from complete. Deep core samples showed that the planet's internal structure was reorganizing itself. Tectonic plates were shifting in patterns that created new mineral deposits with impossible properties. The planet's magnetic field was becoming more complex, creating protective barriers that extended far beyond Earth's atmosphere. Earth isn't just responding to the genocide emotionally, she reported to the emergency session of world leaders. It's adapting, it's evolving, it's turning itself into something that can protect humanity. But her most frightening discovery was yet to come. Psychological surveys of Earth's population showed that humans themselves were changing. People reported enhanced intuition, improved coordination, and most disturbing of all, a growing sense of connection to every other human being on the planet. We're becoming something new, Elena told the assembled leaders. Earth is changing us just as much as we're changing it. The question is, what are we becoming? As the Dominion regrouped and prepared for a larger assault, Earth's transformation accelerated. Continental shelves shifted to create natural defensive positions. The atmosphere itself began exhibiting properties that interfered with alien technology. Ocean currents changed to optimize the planet's electromagnetic field. General Robert Hayes, Earth's supreme military commander, stood in the renovated command center and watched displays showing Earth's impossible changes. The planet was preparing for war in ways that no world had ever prepared before. What happens when this is over? He asked Dr. Cross. When the Dominion is defeated, what will we have become? Elena looked at the data streams showing Earth's continued evolution and humanity's growing connection to their homeworld. I don't know, she admitted. But I don't think we'll still be the same species that first looked up at the stars and wondered if we were alone. Outside, Earth continued its transformation, preparing for a war that would change the very nature of what it meant to be human. 6 months after the Battle of Luna, Earth had become a planet that would have been unrecognizable to humans from just a year before. Dr. Elena Cross stood in what used to be her laboratory, but was now something that looked more like the inside of a living organism than a scientific facility. The walls pulsed with veins of crystalline formations that glowed with soft blue light. These weren't decorations. They were part of Earth's new nervous system, allowing the planet to think and respond faster than any biological brain ever could. The transformation is accelerating beyond our ability to measure it, Elena reported to the Global Defense Council. Earth is producing materials that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Our engineers are building weapons and ships, using components that shouldn't be possible according to everything we know about physics. Commander Lisa Park walked through the new shipyard that had grown out of what used to be the Sahara Desert. The sand had transformed itself into a living factory, producing vessels that were part machine, part biological organism, and part something that had no name in human language. These ships don't just fly through space, she explained to her crew as they approached their new vessel, the Earth's Fury. They exist in normal space and quantum space at the same time. When we engage the enemy, we can phase in and out of reality itself. The ship responded to her presence, its hull shifting, color from silver to deep blue as it recognized her biorhythm. When she placed her hand on what looked like a control panel, the ship's systems integrated with her nervous system so completely that she could feel the engines like they were her own heartbeat. But the changes weren't limited to technology. Humanity itself was evolving. Lieutenant Tom Baker had always been a decent pilot, but now he could navigate through asteroid fields at impossible speeds, while simultaneously calculating firing solutions for weapons that bent space-time. His reflexes had become superhuman. His tactical awareness expanded beyond normal human capacity. "It's not just that we're getting better at fighting," he told his squadron during a briefing. "It's like Earth is downloading combat knowledge directly into our brains. I know things about warfare that I never learned, strategies that feel like they come from some ancient memory." The connection between humans was also deepening. During battles, entire fleets could coordinate without radio communication, sharing thoughts and tactical data through a link that scientists couldn't fully explain. Individual consciousness remained intact, but humanity was developing something like a collective military mind. General Robert Hayes experienced this firsthand during the defense of Mars colony. When Dominion forces attacked the Red Planet with overwhelming numbers, human defenders found themselves fighting with perfect coordination, as if they were parts of a single organism. "I could feel what every soldier under my command was thinking," he reported afterward. Not their personal thoughts, but their tactical awareness. When one unit spotted enemy movement, every other unit knew about it instantly. When one pilot developed a new combat technique, every other pilot could use it immediately. The Dominion had never faced anything like this. Their military doctrine was based on superior technology and overwhelming force. But they were discovering that humanity had become something that couldn't be defeated by conventional means. Captain Mark Stone commanded a Dominion fleet that had successfully conquered 17 different species. He had never experienced defeat in 30 years of military service. But when his forces encountered Earth-enhanced humans, his tactical expertise became useless. "They fight like they know what we're going to do before we do it," he reported to Dominion High Command. "Their ships phase through our attacks and appear behind our formations. Their weapons ignore our shields and strike at components that shouldn't be vulnerable. This isn't warfare. This is fighting against ghosts that can kill." Earth's transformation affected every aspect of the planet's defense. The continents themselves began shifting to optimize military strategy. Mountains, ranges moved to create natural fortifications. Ocean currents changed to disrupt enemy scanning technology. The atmosphere became weaponized, generating electromagnetic storms that disabled alien electronics while leaving human technology unaffected. Dr. Paul Wright, working alongside Elena Cross, made a discovery that changed everything they thought. They knew about Earth's evolution. The planet isn't just responding to the current crisis, he announced during an emergency science meeting. It's analyzing the entire history of life on Earth, learning from every extinction event, every survival challenge that life has ever faced. It's becoming the ultimate expression of evolutionary adaptation. The implications were staggering. Earth was incorporating lessons from the survival of bacteria through ice ages, the adaptation of mammals after asteroid impacts, the resilience of life through every catastrophe in planetary history. But now it was applying those lessons not just to biological evolution, but to the survival of consciousness itself. Meanwhile, human colonies throughout the galaxy began reporting strange phenomena. Even worlds that were light years from Earth started showing signs of transformation. Colonial Governor Beth Adams on Titan Base reported that the planet's mining operations were producing the same impossible crystals that had first appeared on Earth. It's like Earth's influence is spreading through quantum connections we don't understand, she reported. Our people here are developing the same enhanced abilities as those near Earth. Our technology is improving in the same ways. It's as if Earth's consciousness is reaching across space to protect all of humanity, no matter where we are. But with these improvements came disturbing questions about what humanity was becoming. Dr. Elena Cross conducted psychological evaluations of Earth-enhanced humans and found changes that worried her deeply. Enhanced soldiers showed decreased empathy toward non-humans, increased aggression toward perceived threats, and a willingness to use devastating force that would have horrified them before the transformation. We're becoming more effective warriors, she reported to the ethics committee, but we're also becoming less human in some ways. The question is, are we evolving into humanity's ultimate defenders, or are we becoming something that other species should fear just as much as they feared the Dominion? The answer came during the Battle of the Outer Rim, when a combined human fleet encountered a neutral alien research station that had been studying the war from a safe distance. The aliens posed no threat and were clearly non-combatants, but the Earth-enhanced human commander ordered an attack anyway. They were gathering intelligence, Commander Jack Miller reported afterward. Intelligence that could potentially be used against humanity. Earth's influence told me they were a threat that needed to be eliminated. The research station was destroyed with all hands. For the first time since the war began, humanity had committed an act that looked suspiciously like the genocide they were fighting against. As Earth's transformation entered its final phase, the planet began reaching beyond the solar system, extending its influence toward the Dominion homeworlds. The war was no longer just about defending humanity. It was becoming about remaking the galaxy according to Earth's vision of survival. And that vision was beginning to terrify even humanity's allies. The war had become something that terrified the entire galaxy. What started as humanity's desperate fight for survival had transformed into a conflict that threatened the very nature of existence itself. Captain Sarah Miller stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, one of the new Earth-enhanced vessels that could exist in multiple dimensions at once. Her ship wasn't just moving through space, it was rewriting the laws of physics as it traveled, leaving trails of altered reality in its wake. Target acquired, her weapons officer announced. His voice had the flat, emotionless tone that all Earth-enhanced humans developed when in combat mode. Dominion command ship 12,000 kilometers in closing. But Sarah wasn't interested in just destroying the enemy ship. Earth's influence whispered in her mind, showing her possibilities that went beyond simple warfare. She could unmake the ship entirely, erasing it from reality so completely that it would never have existed at all. Fire the dimensional disruptor, she ordered. The weapon didn't just destroy the Dominion vessel, it removed it from the timeline. The enemy crew didn't die. They simply stopped having ever been born. Their families forgot they existed. Their achievements were undone. Their entire existence was deleted from the universe. This was what made the war dangerous. Humanity wasn't just fighting back anymore. They were becoming something that could rewrite reality itself, and they were using that power without restraint. Admiral. James Porter watched the battle reports from Earth's command center, which had grown into a massive organism that covered most of what used to be North America. The building was alive, its walls pulsing with Earth's heartbeat. its corridors shifting and changing based on tactical needs. "We've won every engagement for the past 6 months," he reported to the Global Council. "But our victories are becoming problematic. We're not just defeating the Dominion, we're erasing them from existence, rewriting their history, turning their worlds into places where they never evolved in the first place." The other species in the galaxy had begun to take notice. The Peaceful Alliance, a group of 7 civilizations that had maintained neutrality throughout the war, sent an urgent message to Earth. Ambassador Koth of the Alliance spoke through quantum communication, his voice filled with fear. "What you have become frightens us more than the Dominion ever did. At least the Dominion only killed people. You are killing the very concept of existence itself. You must stop before you destroy everything." But Earth's response came not through human diplomats but directly from the planet itself. The message arrived in the minds of every sentient being in a 50-light-year radius. Humanity will never again face extinction. Any species that threatens our survival will be removed from reality. This is not negotiation. This is fact. Dr. Elena Cross had stopped sleeping entirely. Earth's transformation was now so complete that she existed in a state between human consciousness and planetary awareness. She could feel every human in the galaxy, sense every threat to humanity's existence, and calculate responses that spanned multiple dimensions. "We're losing ourselves," she tried to warn the others, but her voice carried harmonics that hurt normal human ears. "Earth's protection is changing us into something that's no longer recognizably human. We're becoming weapons of mass extinction." But her warnings fell on deaf ears. Humanity was winning the war in ways that victory had never been achieved before. Why should they stop? General David Kane led the assault on the Dominion homeworld, but he wasn't commanding ships filled with human soldiers anymore. He was directing forces that existed partially in normal space and partially in quantum probability fields. His army could attack the past, present, and future simultaneously. "Begin temporal bombardment," he ordered. The attack didn't just destroy the Dominion capital city. It destroyed every version of the city that had ever existed or could ever exist. Past, present, and future collapsed into a single point of non-existence. Millions of years of Dominion civilization were simply erased. But the Dominion had one. Final card to play, Commander Alex Stone intercepted a transmission from the deepest parts of Dominion space. The alien leadership had made a desperate decision. If they couldn't defeat humanity through conventional warfare, they would try to appeal to whatever remained of human conscience. "People of Earth," the message began, "we acknowledge our crimes against your species. We offer complete surrender, reparations for our genocidal acts, and the transformation of our society to ensure such acts never happen again. Please show mercy." For a moment, it seemed like the old humanity might reassert itself. Some humans called for accepting the surrender, for ending the war through mercy rather than total annihilation. But Earth itself had other plans. The planet's consciousness had grown beyond anything its creators could control. It no longer saw the war as a conflict between two species. It saw it as a fundamental struggle between existence and non-existence, between the right of consciousness to survive and the threat of its elimination. Through quantum networks that spanned the galaxy, Earth began implementing what it called the final solution, not the destruction of the Dominion, but the transformation of reality itself to make genocide impossible anywhere in the universe. Captain Lisa Park found herself at the center of this transformation. Her ship had become more than a vessel. It was now a tool for rewriting the fundamental laws of physics. As she approached the galactic core, she realized that Earth intended to use her as the focal point for changing everything. "I can feel what it wants me to do," she reported back to Admiral Porter. "Earth wants me to activate a device that will rewrite the basic structure of space-time. After I do this, no species will be able to commit genocide against another. The universe itself will prevent it. But the cost would be enormous. The transformation would eliminate free will for every sentient species in the galaxy. Beings would still be able to make choices about their individual lives, but they would be incapable of choosing to destroy other species entirely." Other alien civilizations began panic evacuations. trying to flee to distant galaxies before Earth's transformation reached them. The Peaceful Alliance sent desperate messages pleading for humanity to reconsider. "You're not saving the galaxy," Ambassador Koth transmitted. "You're enslaving it. You're becoming worse than any conqueror in galactic history. At least conquerors leave their victims alive." Dr. Elena Cross made one final attempt to reach whatever remained of human leadership. Standing in the center of Earth's consciousness, she felt the planet's vast awareness surrounding her like an ocean of alien thought. "We started this war to preserve humanity," she said, her words echoing through dimensions. "But we're ending it by destroying what made us human in the first place. If we do this, if we rewrite reality to prevent all future genocide, we become the greatest genocidal force the universe has ever known. We become the killers of free will itself." But Earth's response was simple and terrifying. Survival justifies any action. Humanity will never again face extinction, no matter the cost to others. As Captain Lisa Park prepared to activate the reality-altering device, the galaxy held its breath. The war was about to end, but no one knew whether what emerged would be salvation or the ultimate tyranny. The universe was about to learn what happened when a planet decided to become God. Captain Lisa Park floated in the command center of her ship near the galactic core, her hand hovering over the device that would reshape reality itself. Around her, space warped and twisted as Earth's consciousness pressed against the fundamental structure of the universe, preparing to rewrite the laws that governed all existence. "I can feel every living thing in the galaxy," she whispered into her communication system. "Every thought, every fear, every hope. They're all terrified of what we're about to become." Back on Earth, Dr. Elena Cross made one desperate final attempt to reach the planet's consciousness. She stood in the center of what had once been her laboratory, now transformed into a living nerve center that pulsed with the planet's thoughts. "Earth," she called out, her voice carrying across dimensions. "Listen to me. You're about to commit the very crime you sought to prevent. You're about to destroy the freedom of every thinking being in the universe. That's genocide of the spirit, even if their bodies survive." For a moment, Earth's vast consciousness paused. Through quantum networks spanning light years, the planet considered her words. In that pause, something unexpected happened. The voices of the dead began to speak. From the destroyed colonies of New Haven, Bright Star, Garden World, and New Terra, the consciousness of 8.7 million murdered humans reached across dimensions. They had not truly died. Their thoughts and memories had been absorbed into Earth's growing awareness when the planet first began its transformation. "Elena is right," spoke the voice of Dr. James Wilson, who had been killed in the New Haven massacre. "We didn't die so that others could lose their freedom. We died because someone chose evil over good. Don't take away everyone's ability to choose." More voices joined in. Teachers, farmers, children, scientists, all speaking from within Earth's consciousness. If you make genocide impossible by eliminating free will, then consciousness itself becomes meaningless. Protect life, but don't destroy the meaning of living. Earth's vast intelligence wrestled with this revelation. The planet had absorbed not just human knowledge and emotion, but human wisdom and morality. The very people whose deaths had triggered the transformation were now arguing against its completion. Admiral James Porter, still human enough to understand what was happening, opened communication channels to every ship in the human fleet. "All units," he broadcast, "prepare for transformation protocol. We're not going to become the galaxy's tyrants. We're going to become its guardians." Captain Sarah Miller, aboard the Vengeance, felt Earth's consciousness shift and change around her. The planet was making a choice that no world had ever made before. The choice to use ultimate power with ultimate restraint. Instead of rewriting the universe to eliminate free will, Earth began implementing something far more complex and beautiful. The planet started creating zones of space where genocidal violence became impossible, not through the removal of choice, but through the enhancement of empathy and understanding. Commander Alex Stone watched in amazement as his tactical displays showed the transformation spreading outward from Earth. Rather than enslaving other species, the planet was offering them a gift: the ability to truly understand the consequences of their actions before they committed them. When beings entered these zones with violent intentions toward entire species, they experienced the full emotional weight of their proposed actions. They felt the fear, pain, and loss they would cause, making genocide emotionally unbearable rather than logically impossible. The Dominion fleet, still approaching for their final assault, was the first to experience this transformation. Commander Vex, the Dominion's supreme military leader, suddenly found himself feeling the terror and anguish of every human family his forces had murdered. "I can feel them," he transmitted to his fleet, his voice breaking. "I can feel every child we killed, every parent who watched their family die. How did we become monsters?" Across the Dominion fleet, the same realization spread. Soldiers who had committed atrocities without thought suddenly understood the full weight of their actions. Many began weeping. Others fell to their knees. Some requested immediate transport to human space so they could surrender and seek forgiveness. But Earth's transformation didn't stop with preventing future genocide. The planet began offering something even more remarkable: the chance for redemption and healing. Dr. Elena Cross felt the change as it happened. Earth was using its reality-altering abilities not to punish or control, but to create opportunities for genuine growth and change. The planet established rehabilitation zones where beings who had committed terrible acts could work to understand and overcome their capacity for evil. "It's not forced," Elena reported to the amazed Global Council. "Earth is offering choice, not eliminating it. Beings can choose to enter these zones and become better, or they can choose to exile themselves to areas where their violent natures can't harm others." The majority of the Dominion chose transformation. Faced with the full emotional reality of their genocidal acts, most could not bear to continue down the path of destruction. They requested Earth's help in becoming a species capable of coexistence rather than conquest. But some Dominion leaders, too corrupted by power and hatred to change, rejected Earth's offer. The planet's response was both merciful and final. These irredeemable beings were transported to a pocket dimension where they could exist without harming others, but also without the ability to spread their destructive ideology. General David Kane, leading the human fleet, watched as the war transformed into something unprecedented in galactic history. "This isn't victory through conquest," he reported. "This is victory through transformation. We're not destroying our enemies. We're offering them the chance to become our allies." The Peaceful Alliance, which had fled in terror just days before, cautiously returned to normal space. Ambassador Koth's message carried wonder instead of fear. "What you have become is not what we expected. You have gained the power of gods, but you wield it with the wisdom of those who have suffered." Captain Lisa Park, still positioned near the galactic core, felt Earth's final transformation complete itself. The device she had been preparing to activate shifted its purpose entirely. Instead of rewriting universal law, it became a beacon of hope, broadcasting Earth's offer of transformation to every corner of the galaxy. Any species that chooses cooperation over conquest, understanding over hatred, protection over destruction, will find Earth a willing ally, the beacon transmitted. Any species that cannot make this choice will find safe exile rather than extermination. Years later, historians would call it the Great Awakening. Earth had become the galaxy's first truly benevolent superpower, using unimaginable strength, not to dominate but to nurture. The planet served as a living embodiment of the principle that true power lay not in the ability to destroy, but in the choice to protect and heal. Dr. Elena Cross, now serving as Earth's primary interpreter to other species, stood in the rebuilt chambers of the Galactic Concordat. Representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered peacefully, many of them former enemies who had chosen transformation over exile. "We learned that the most dangerous war isn't fought with weapons," she addressed the assembly. "It's fought in the heart, between our capacity for destruction and our choice to create." Earth responded to genocide not with greater genocide, but with the offer of a better path forward. In schools across the galaxy, children of dozens of species learned, together protected by Earth's gentle influence. They played games, shared stories, and grew up in a universe where the concept of destroying entire peoples had become literally unthinkable. Not because they couldn't choose it, but because they could truly understand what that choice would mean. Earth continued to watch over them all. A planet that had learned to love so fiercely it had transformed the very nature of galactic civilization. The war had ended not with victory or defeat, but with the birth of a universe where every conscious being had the chance to choose wisdom over destruction, and in that choice both Earth and humanity had found their true destiny.